Look, if you work in digital marketing or strategy, you know this feeling all too well. You're drowning in dashboards, staring at a sea of numbers, but you're completely starving for actual needle-moving growth. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely unpack the strategic foundations of digital marketing measurement. It's time to transform how you look at your data. I'm genuinely super excited to dive into this because mastering what we're about to cover, that's exactly what separates the teams who just blindly spend budgets from the teams that actually drive real commercial success. We're going to figure out how to finally tune out the noise and actually use data strategically.
Let's kick things off with the ultimate question, the big one every marketer has to face. It sounds simple, right? But it has massive implications. Is your marketing generating attention, or is it generating actual profit? Think about it. Today, literally every single digital interaction creates a data point. Somebody pauses a TikTok, they click an email, they abandon a cart, it all pings the system. But simply collecting that data and actually understanding what it means for your business, yeah, those are two totally different things.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by tackling the vanity metrics trap. Then we'll upgrade to true KPIs, build out a solid measurement hierarchy, explore how attribution shapes budgets, and finally, we'll look ahead at the predictive analytics shift and ESG accountability. Let's get into it.
All right, section 1, the vanity metrics trap.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You log into your analytics platform and boom, you just get hit with this giant wall of charts. The source material hits the nail on the head here. It says, one of the biggest challenges in digital marketing today is not the lack of information, it is the inability to identify which information actually matters. These platforms will happily throw thousands of numbers at us, but remember, they're usually optimizing for their own engagement, not our business clarity. So what should we actually care about? To figure that out, we got to go back to basics.
Let's establish a baseline. What exactly is a metric? Well, a metric is just a quantifiable measure related to marketing activity or audience behavior. Basically, it just tells us what happened. Think of metrics like the raw ingredients in a kitchen. You might have a pantry completely packed with flour, sugar, and eggs. But just having the ingredients doesn't automatically mean you're baking a masterpiece, right? Metrics give us operational intelligence, but on their own, they're really just observations.
You definitely know the usual suspects here. Website sessions, click-through rates, bounce rates, video completion rates, email opens, app downloads. And hey, these are incredibly useful if you need to diagnose a day-to-day operational hiccup. Like if your bounce rate suddenly spikes out of nowhere, you can jump in and see, oh, my landing page is broken. But keep in mind, these metrics only tell us the what. They don't necessarily prove that the activity was actually good for the business overall.
Let me give you a fascinating example. There's this case of a Canadian online furniture retailer in Calgary. Their marketing team launched this huge campaign, and guess what? They saw a jaw-dropping 300% growth in website traffic. 300%, plus a 250% jump in Instagram engagement, and they even went completely viral on TikTok. If you're just looking at those raw metrics in a vacuum, you're popping champagne, right? You'd think they totally knocked it out of the park.
But here is the harsh reality. Despite all that viral fame and exploding traffic, revenues stayed almost completely flat. Actually, it gets worse. Cart abandonment and product return rates went up significantly. This is the absolute classic vanity metrics trap. Numbers that look amazing on a slide deck in a meeting, but completely fail to reflect any meaningful business performance. They generated a massive amount of attention, but virtually zero profitable customer behavior.
Okay, moving on to section 2, metrics versus KPIs.
So, how do we avoid the vanity trap and stop chasing hollow attention? We upgrade our thinking to KPIs, key performance indicators. This is a strategically selected metric tied directly to a business objective. And honestly, the word key is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Not every metric deserves executive attention. Good KPIs answer the high-level stuff. Are we growing revenue? Are we actually reducing customer acquisition costs? If a metric isn't answering a strategic question like that, it's just a supporting metric. It is not a KPI.
There's a massive contrast here that we really need to understand. On the left, we've got metrics, operational noise, essentially, used to fix ads, things like click-through rates. On the right, we have KPIs. These track actual strategic business progress, like bottom-line revenue growth. And this is so absolutely crucial, because what you choose to measure literally shapes your organization's behavior. If you only grade your team on cheap clicks and traffic, they're going to go out and optimize for cheap clicks and irrelevant traffic. But if you measure them on KPIs like revenue growth and acquisition cost, they'll totally shift their daily decisions to chase valuable long-term customers.
Which brings us to Section 3, the measurement hierarchy.
To cure that whole corporate disease of dashboard dependency, we need a structured framework. Let's look at this great example of a Canadian bank trying to reduce their expensive in-branch servicing costs. Step 1 starts at the top with a business objective: increase digital adoption. Step 2 narrows it down to the marketing objective: encourage mobile banking usage among existing customers. Step 3 is our KPI, monthly active users. And way down at Step 4, we have the supporting metrics, like app downloads. Following this exact hierarchy lets executives seamlessly connect the raw, everyday activity down at the bottom directly to the big, strategic goals at the top.
Section 4, attribution models.
Once the hierarchy is built and our KPIs are locked in, we hit the next huge hurdle: figuring out what actually caused the customer to convert. Customer journeys are notoriously messy. You might watch a video on Monday, do a Google search on Wednesday, and then finally click a retargeting ad on Friday to buy. So who gets the credit? Well, we have different models for that. First click gives all the glory to the introduction. Last click gives it all to the final interaction. Now imagine a Nova Scotia tourism campaign relying entirely on last click attribution. A Google search right before booking looks like the absolute hero, right? But because of that logic, the team might mistakenly cut the budget for the YouTube awareness videos that actually made the person want to visit Nova Scotia in the very first place.
And that scenario proves a really fundamental truth. Attribution isn't just some technical toggle buried in a software settings menu. Attribution is strategic architecture. It literally dictates where your organizational budgets flow, how your channels are prioritized, and how the C-suite perceives ROI. Honestly, if your attribution model is fundamentally flawed, your budget allocation is automatically going to be flawed too, no matter how brilliant your ad creative is.
Let's jump into Section 5, the predictive analytics shift.
Now that we've got the foundational architecture sorted, let's talk about where things are heading. Historically, we lived heavily in the world of descriptive analytics, constantly asking what happened last week or what was yesterday's traffic. But the massive game-changing shift happening right now is predictive analytics. It asks what is likely to happen next. For example, major Canadian telcos aren't just looking at who canceled their subscriptions yesterday anymore. They are actively using predictive models to analyze usage patterns and actually anticipate which customers are likely to churn tomorrow. That means they can step in early with a targeted retention offer before the customer even considers leaving. It's a total paradigm shift.
And finally, Section 6, the future with ESG accountability.
We are moving so far beyond just revenue and conversion optimization now. Digital measurement today extends deep into environmental, social, and governance expectations. Modern marketers are now on the hook to measure privacy compliance under frameworks like GDPR, track their AI practices to monitor for potential bias, and, this is wild, even measure the carbon emissions generated by their digital ad supply chains. The programmatic ad systems we use take a ton of computational energy, and measuring sustainable media procurement is fast becoming just as critical to large enterprises as basic profitability.
This all circles back to a foundational truth of business strategy that we touched on earlier. The text puts it perfectly. Measurement systems do not simply observe organizations. They shape organizations. Think about that. If you build a system that rewards employees for superficial impressions, they will dedicate their entire day to optimizing for visibility instead of real business outcomes. But if you measure customer lifetime value, trust, and sustainability, your team will naturally optimize for long-term sustainable growth. The data you choose to look at literally becomes the reality your team creates.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a direct, provocative thought to take back to your team. Organizations become what they measure. So, what are you optimizing for? Seriously, take a hard look at your dashboards this week. Ask yourself, is your measurement framework actually aligned with your true strategic goals, or are you just chasing vanity metrics that look great on a chart but ultimately mean nothing? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope it helps you completely transform how you structure and analyze your data moving forward. Keep learning and keep optimizing for what truly matters.